Have you ever wondered if the person who hurt you most could become the one who heals you? This is the story of how my worst enemy became my greatest love. I'm Ethan, and this is how everything changed. The coffee in my hand had gone cold 20 minutes ago, but I kept holding it anyway. Something about the familiar weight of the cup grounded me as I stood outside Riverside Hall, staring up at the brick building that held for years of memories I'd tried to forget. 5 years. It had been 5 years since I'd set foot on this campus. Ethan Martinez. A cheerful voice broke through my thoughts. I turned to see Professor Chen, older now, with more silver in her hair, but still wearing that kind smile I remembered. I thought that was you. Welcome back, Professor Chen. I managed a smile, the kind I'd perfected in my years working in marketing, warm, professional, hiding everything underneath. It's good to see you. We're so thrilled you agreed to give the career talk for our seniors. Your success story is exactly what our students need to hear. She gestured toward the building. Shall we head to my office? We have about an hour before your presentation. As we walked through the familiar corridors, I felt my carefully constructed composure beginning to crack. The walls still had that same institutional cream color. The bulletin boards still overflowed with flyers for clubs, study groups, and social events. Even the smell was the same old books, floor polish, and the faint scent of the cafeteria's perpetual coffee brewing. You seem tense, Professor Chen observed as we climbed the stairs to the 3rd floor. Nervous about public speaking? You never used to be. I wasn't nervous about the presentation. I could sell anything to anyone. It was literally my job. What made my stomach twist was the possibility of running into him, Dylan Crawford. Just thinking his name made my jaw tighten. Even after all these years, the memories came flooding back with painful clarity. The accidentally spilled drinks on my laptop, the whispered slurs in the dining hall, the way he'd rallied half the baseball team to make my life a living hell for 2 solid years. All because I'd turned him down at a party freshman year. I hadn't known he was struggling with his own identity then. I'd just known that the gorgeous, a popular athlete who everyone adored had cornered me in a hallway, tried to kiss me. And when I gently said I didn't think it was a good idea, that he seemed drunk, that maybe we should talk when he was sober, his face had transformed into something cold and cruel. By Monday morning, rumor had spread that I'd been the one to come on to him, that I was some predatory gay guy who went after straight men. The harassment started small pointed looks, people moving away from me in class. But Dylan had made sure it escalated. For 2 years until he finally graduated, my college experience had been a nightmare I endured rather than enjoyed. Earth to Ethan. Professor Chen waved a hand in front of my face, pulling me back to the present. We'd reached her office. You completely zoned out there. Sorry, I said, shaking off the past. Just a lot of memories in these halls. Not all good ones, if I recall correctly. Her expression softened with understanding. She'd been one of the few professors who'd noticed something was wrong, who'd offered her office as a safe space during those dark months. But you survived. You thrived. That's what matters. I wanted to believe her. I'd built a good life in the 5 years since graduation. I had a corner office at a prestigious marketing firm in the city. I had friends, a nice apartment, a dating life that was admittedly sparse but existent. By every external measure, I'd won. So why did being back here make me feel like that scared 20-year-old again? We spent the next 40 minutes reviewing my presentation outline. Professor Chen asked thoughtful questions, shared updates about the department, and carefully avoided mentioning Dylan's name. I appreciated that more than she knew. At 10 minutes to 2, we headed toward the auditorium. Students had already started filing in fresh-faced. Seniors who reminded me so much of who I'd been at there. Age. Hopeful. Uncertain. Trying to figure out who they were and who they wanted to become. I was adjusting my laptop. At the podium, when I heard it, a laugh that sent ice down my spine. Deep, warm, the kind of laugh that made everyone around join in. I knew that laugh. I'd heard it countless times, usually right before something terrible happened to me. I looked up, and there he was, Dylan. Crawford walked into the auditorium like he owned it. which honestly, he probably had back when we were students. He was talking animatedly with a group of students, gesturing with his hands. That charismatic energy radiating off him the way it always had. He looked different. Older, obviously we were both 27 now. His dark hair was shorter, more professionally styled. He'd grown a neatly trimmed beard that somehow made his jawline even more defined. He wore dark jeans and a burgundy Henley that fit him in a way that suggested he still worked out religiously. He looked good. Damn him, he looked really good. And then his eyes found mine. I watched the recognition flash across his face. His smile faltered for just a second, so brief that anyone else might have missed it. But I'd spent 2 years studying his expressions, learning to anticipate when the next attack was coming. I saw the moment he realized who I was. He said something to the students around him and started walking toward the front of the auditorium. Toward me. Every instinct screamed at me to run. But I'd spent 5 years building myself into someone who didn't run anymore. So I stood my ground, lifted my chin, and met his approach with what I hoped looked like indifference. Ethan Martinez. He stopped a few feet away, his hands shoved into his pockets. Up close, I could see the fine lines around his eyes, the slight scar on his left eyebrow that was new. I heard you were coming back to speak. I wanted to catch your talk, Dylan. Kept my voice neutral, professional. I didn't realize you were still involved with the college. I teach here now. Assistant professor in the sports management department. Shifted his weight, looking almost nervous. That couldn't be right. Dylan Crawford didn't do nervous. Started 2 years ago. I also helped coach the baseball team. Of course he did. Of course he got to stay in this place that held so much pain for me. While I'd fled the moment I got my diploma. Congratulations, I said. The word tasting like ash in my mouth. Ethan. He took a step closer, and I instinctively stepped back. He noticed. I saw it in the way his expression tightened, the way his hands clenched briefly before relaxing again. I was hoping we could talk. After your presentation, there are things I need to say to you. I don't think that's a good idea. I turned back to my laptop, trying to dismiss him, trying to ignore the way my heart was racing, the way old fear and something else, something I refused to name churned in my stomach. Please. Low. His voice dropped lower, urgent. Just 10 minutes. That's all I'm asking. Before I could respond, Professor Chen approached the podium, microphone in hand. We're ready to start when you are, Ethan. I nodded, grateful for the interruption. I'm ready. Dylan stood there for another moment, his blue eyes searching my face for something I wasn't willing to give. Finally, he nodded and walked away, settling into a seat in the 3rd row. Right where I couldn't avoid seeing him for the next hour, perfect. I took a deep breath, pushed every emotion down into the locked box where I kept all things Dylan related, and smiled at the audience. The professional mask slipped back into place seamlessly. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ethan Martinez, and 5 years ago, I was sitting exactly where you are now, terrified about the future and wondering if I had what it took to make it in the real world. The presentation went smoothly. I'd given versions of this talk a dozen times at other venues. The story of how I'd taken an entry-level position at a mid-tier marketing firm and worked my way up to creative director, leading campaigns for major brands. I shared the lessons I'd learned, the mistakes I'd made, the importance of authenticity and resilience. That last part felt particularly ironic with Dylan sitting there, watching me with an intensity that made my skin prickle. The students asked good questions. One young woman asked how I dealt with discrimination in the workplace as an openly gay man. I answered honestly it existed. It was real, but I'd found ways to navigate it without compromising who I was. I didn't mention that my college experience had been far worse than anything I'd faced professionally. I didn't mention that the person who'd made those years hell was sitting right there, in the 3rd row. When the presentation ended, students swarmed the podium, asking for business cards, advice, LinkedIn connections. I smiled and chatted with each one, genuinely enjoying their energy and ambition. But I was hyper-aware of Dylan standing off to the side, waiting. Eventually the crowd thinned. Professor Chen touched my shoulder. That was wonderful, Ethan. Would you like to join some of us for dinner? We're heading to that Italian place on Main Street. I appreciate the offer, but I have a train to catch, I lied smoothly. My ticket's for 6 o'clock. She looked disappointed but understanding. Well, it was wonderful having you back. Don't be a stranger, all right? After she left, the auditorium emptied until it was just Dylan and me. The silence stretched between us, heavy with 5 years of unspoken words. You're an incredible speaker, Dylan said finally. The students were hanging on every word. Thank you. I started packing up my laptop, keeping my hands busy. If you'll excuse me, I need to, I'm sorry. The words stopped me cold. I looked up at him, searching for the punchline, the trap. But his face was open, earnest in a way I'd never seen before. I'm sorry for everything I did to you in college, he continued, his voice rough with emotion. I was cruel. I was a coward. And I've spent the last 5 years wishing I could take it all back, knowing I can't. I stared at him, my mind struggling to process what I was hearing. This was Dylan Crawford, the guy who'd made my life a nightmare, who'd turned people against me, who'd made me dread walking across campus. And he was. Apologizing? Why? The question came out sharper than I intended. Why now? It's been 5 years, Dylan. 5 years of silence. And now, you suddenly want to clear your conscience? It's not about my conscience. He ran a hand through his hair, frustration evident. Okay, maybe partly it is. But mostly, I've thought about you. About what I did. Every single day since graduation. And when I heard you were coming back, I knew I had to try to make things right. Or at least, acknowledge how wrong I was. Acknowledge. I let out a bitter laugh. That's a nice word for it. You want to acknowledge that you made 2 years of my life absolute hell? That you turned people against me, spread lies about me, made me feel like I was wrong for existing. Yes, his voice cracked slightly. All of that. I was dealing with my own shit, my own confusion about who I was, and I took it out on you in the worst possible way. You didn't deserve any of it, Ethan. You were just being yourself, being brave enough to live openly, and I punished you for it because I was too scared to do the same. The confession hung in the air between us. Part of me wanted to accept it, to let go of the anger I'd carried for so long. But another part, the part that still flinched at memories of those years, couldn't let go so easily. I appreciate the apology, I said carefully, zipping up my laptop bag. But I'm not sure what you expect me to do with it. Forgive you? Tell you it's all okay now? I don't expect anything, Dylan said quietly. I needed you to know that I'm sorry, that I've changed, that I understand if you hate me. I really looked at him for the first time since he'd walked into the auditorium. And what I saw surprised me. There was genuine remorse in his eyes. Pain, regret. This wasn't the cocky, cruel boy I remembered. This was someone who'd grown, who'd faced his own demons. It should have made me feel better. Instead, it just made everything more complicated. I don't hate you, I admitted, surprising myself. I did, for a long time. But hate takes energy, and I eventually decided you weren't worth it. I built a life where you don't exist, where those years don't matter, and I'd like to keep it that way. Something flickered across his face. Hurt, maybe, or disappointment. But he nodded. I understand. I'm glad you built that life, Ethan. You deserve every bit of success you've achieved. He turned to leave, and I should have felt relieved. This was what I wanted. Closure, without complication. But watching him walk away, shoulders slightly slumped in a way I'd never seen before, I felt something unexpected. Curiosity, double quotes Dylan. Wait, he stopped, turned back. Hope flickered in his eyes. You said you've changed? That you're out now? I hadn't meant to ask, but the question escaped anyway. A small, sad smile crossed his face. Yeah, came out to my family 3 years ago. It didn't go great, but we're working on it. I'm trying to be the person I should have been back then. Someone who doesn't hurt people just because he's hurting. I studied him, this man who was both intimately familiar and completely foreign. Why'd you come back here? To teach? Penance? Maybe? He shrugged. Or maybe I wanted to be for other students what I wish someone had been for me. A mentor who actually gives a damn. Someone who creates safe spaces instead of destroying them. Despite everything, I felt a reluctant respect stir in my chest. It would have been easier for Dylan to run from this place the way I had. Instead, he'd stayed, faced his past, tried to do better. Good, I said finally. The students are lucky to have someone like that. Are you sure you have to catch that 6 o'clock train? Dylan asked suddenly, because there's a coffee shop off campus neutral territory and I'd really like to buy you a cup. Just to talk. No expectations, no pressure. Just two people who've both grown up since the last time they really spoke. Every logical part of my brain screamed no. This was a bad idea. Dylan Crawford was my past, a chapter I'd closed. Getting coffee with him would only complicate things, stir up emotions I'd worked hard to bury. But there was something in his eyes, vulnerability I'd never seen before that made me hesitate. And maybe, just maybe, I was curious about who he'd become, about whether people really could change. Okay. 1 coffee, I heard myself say. 1 hour. And then I'm getting on that train and going back to my life. The smile that broke across Dylan's face was like sunrise, bright, warm, transforming. 1 coffee, 1 hour, I promise. As we left the auditorium together, walking side by side through the campus that held so many painful memories, I wondered what the hell I'd just agreed to, and why, despite everything. Part of me was almost hopeful the coffee shop Dylan led me to was new, or at least new since my time here. It occupied a converted house just off campus, all exposed brick and mismatched vintage furniture. The kind of place that probably served lattes with foam art and had names for drinks that made you feel pretentious ordering them. This place opened about 3 years ago, Dylan explained as we walked in, as if reading my thoughts. It's become the unofficial faculty hangout. Students come here too, but right now should be quiet. Between afternoon classes and dinner rush, he was right. Only a handful of people occupied the scattered tables, most absorbed in laptops or textbooks. No one looked up as we entered, which I appreciated. The last thing I needed was witnesses to whatever this conversation was about to be. "What can I get you?" Dylan asked as we approached the counter. "I can buy my own coffee." "I know you can, but I asked you here. Let me at least do this." His tone was gentle, not pushy. "Please." I relented. "Americano, black, still taking it straight, no sugar?" A small smile played at his lips. Some things don't change. The fact that he remembered how I took my coffee from 5 years ago unsettled me more than I wanted to admit. I'd assumed I was forgettable to him, just another person he'd tormented and moved on from. But he remembered details. While Dylan ordered Dan Americano for me, some complicated caramel situation for himself, found a table in the back corner, secluded enough for privacy, but with a clear view of the exit. Old habits. He joined me a few minutes later, carefully setting my cup down before taking the seat across from me. For a moment, we just sat there, the silence awkward but not quite hostile. "I don't really know where to start," Dylan admitted, wrapping his hands around his cup. "I've imagined this conversation 1,000 times, but now that we're actually here, why did you do it?" The question came out before I could stop it. "I get that you were closeted, that you were scared. But Dylan, you didn't just reject me. You made it your mission to destroy me. Why?" He flinched like I'd struck him. "Good, maybe he should feel uncomfortable, 'cause you terrified me," he said quietly. "That night at the party, when I tried to kiss you, I was drunk, yeah, but not that drunk. I knew what I was doing. And when you pulled back, when you looked at me with those kind eyes and said we should talk, when I was sober, I panicked. Because I realized you saw me. The real me. The part I was desperately trying to hide. So you decided to punish me for it? I decided to destroy the evidence." His voice was thick with self-loathing. "If I could make everyone believe you were the problem, that you were some predatory, gay guy who came onto straight men then, no one would believe you if you told them what really happened. And more than that, If I could make myself hate you, push you away, maybe I could push away that part of myself too. I took a long sip of my coffee, using the moment to process. It was the explanation I'd always suspected, but hearing him confirm it didn't make it hurt any less. Did it work? I asked. Did hating me make you less gay? Of course not. He let out a humorless laugh. It just made me miserable and cruel. I became someone I hated even more than I hated myself. By the time I graduated, I was drinking too much, sleeping around with women I didn't want to be with, and alienating everyone who actually cared about me. Poor you. Couldn't keep the sarcasm out of my voice. Not asking for sympathy, Ethan. I'm explaining, not excusing. What I did to you was unforgivable. I know that. He met my eyes, and I saw genuine anguish there. After graduation, I moved back home. My plan was to work for my dad's company, marry some nice girl my mother approved of, and spend the rest of my life pretending to be someone I wasn't. What changed? I met someone. Dylan's expression softened. Another guy, also in the closet, also miserable. We started seeing each other, secretly of course, and for a few months I thought maybe I could have both the secret relationship and the straight public life. But then, he got tired of hiding. He wanted more. He wanted me to come out, to actually be with him for real. And I couldn't do it. You chose the closet, chose fear, he corrected. And I lost him. Lost the one person who'd seen all of me and loved me anyway. That's when I hit rock bottom. Started seeing a therapist, actually dealing with my shit instead of running from it. In every session, your face kept coming up. What I'd done to you. How I'd treated you. I shifted uncomfortably in my seat. This wasn't what I'd expected, this raw honesty, this vulnerability. It was easier when Dylan was just the villain in my story. This complexity made everything harder. My therapist suggested I write you a letter, he continued, just to get it all out, even if I never sent it. So I did. I wrote you dozens of letters, actually. Apologizing, explaining, just talking to you the way I should have back then. I never sent them. I figured you'd moved on, built a life, and the last thing you needed was me dragging you back into that mess. But then you heard I was coming back to speak. I realized I might never get another chance to say this to your face. He leaned forward slightly. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm not asking to be friends. I just need you to know that I'm sorry that I've changed, and that seeing you up there today, confident, successful, completely yourself without apology, made me so damn proud and so damn ashamed at the same time. My throat felt tight. I took another sip of coffee to hide the emotion threatening to surface. What do you want from me, Dylan? He was quiet for a long moment, considering. Honestly, I don't know. Maybe just not to hate me? Or if you do hate me, at least know that I understand why and don't blame you for it. I told you, I don't hate you. I traced the rim of my cup with one finger. Hate requires caring, and I stopped caring about you a long time ago. You were just a bad chapter in my story. One I learned from and moved past, and now, sitting here with me? Now, I paused, trying to identify the tangle of emotions in my chest. Now I'm confused, because the Dylan I knew was cruel and cocky and seemed to enjoy watching me suffer. This version of you vulnerable, remorseful, self-aware, I don't know what to do with it. This is who I actually am, he said softly. Or who I'm trying to be, that other person. That was armor. A really shitty, destructive armor that hurt everyone around me, especially you. We fell into silence again, but this time it felt different. Less hostile, more contemplative. Tell me about your life now, Dylan, said eventually. Your presentation was incredible, but I want to know more. Are you happy? Are you seeing anyone? We're not friends, Dylan. I don't owe you my life story.
You're right.
I'm sorry. He backed off immediately, respecting the boundary. That surprised me too. The old Dylan would have pushed, but maybe because he'd backed off, I found myself wanting to share. Just a little. I'm doing okay, I offered. The job is good, demanding, but in a way I enjoy. I have friends, a community. I date occasionally, though nothing serious in the past year or so. Turns out, I have some trust issues when it comes to relationships. I gave him a pointed look. He absorbed that hit without flinching. I'm sorry I contributed to that. You didn't contribute. You caused it. I needed him to understand the full weight of what he'd done. Do you know what it's like to have your first experience with someone showing interest in you turn into a nightmare? To learn that trusting someone, being vulnerable with them, can be weaponized against you. No, he whispered. But I see it now. I see what I stole from you. You didn't steal it. I took it back. I straightened my shoulders. It took time, therapy of my own, and a lot of work. But I learned to trust again. To be open to possibility. You don't get to take credit for breaking me, Dylan, because I refuse to stay broken. The pride in his expression irritated me. Don't look at me like that. Like what? Like you're impressed. Like you admire me. You don't get to do that. You don't get to be proud of me for surviving what you put me through. You're right. He looked down at his coffee. I'm sorry. Seeing you now, seeing who you've become despite everything, it means something to me. Even if I have no right to those feelings. My phone buzzed. A text from my actual 6 o'clock train reminder, the one I'd booked before lying to Professor Chen. I should go. This conversation had already gone on longer and gone deeper than I'd intended, but I didn't move. What about you? I asked instead, surprising myself. You said you came out 3 years ago. Are you seeing anyone? Dylan shook his head. No. I dated a guy for about 6 months last year, but I wasn't ready. I'm still figuring out who I am when I'm not performing for someone else. It wouldn't have been fair to him. At least you recognize that. My therapist would say I'm making progress. He smiled wryly. Slow progress, but progress nonetheless. I found myself studying him again, the way the late afternoon light caught the silver threads in his dark hair. The genuinely warm way he smiled at the barista who'd brought us water without asking. The slight nervous fidget of his fingers on the table. He seemed real, not the polished, perfect athlete who'd ruled the campus. Just a person. Flawed, trying, human. I should go, I said, though I made no move to stand. My train. Right, of course. Dylan started to rise, then hesitated. Ethan, could I? Would it be okay if I gave you my number? No pressure to use it. But if you ever want to talk, or if you're ever back in town, or even if you just want to tell me off some more, I'd like that option to exist. Every instinct told me to say no. To leave this coffee shop and never look back. To keep Dylan Crawford as a closed chapter, not a reopened wound. But I thought about those letters he'd written and never sent. About the 3 years he'd spent teaching here, trying to be better. About the vulnerability in his eyes when he'd apologized. People could change. Maybe not always, maybe not enough. But sometimes they could. One text, I heard myself say. Give me your number, and I'll think about whether I want to reach out. That's all I'm promising. The relief on his face was almost painful to witness. He quickly scribbled his number on a napkin and slid it across the table. Thank you. For the coffee, for listening, for everything. I pocketed the napkin without looking at it and stood. Goodbye, Dylan. Goodbye, Ethan. I made it halfway to the door before he called out, Ethan. I turned. For what it's worth, you were right that night at the party. When you said we should talk sober. If I'd listened to you then, if I'd been brave enough to have that conversation, maybe everything would have been different. Maybe I agreed, but we'll never know. We only get the story we lived, not the ones we might have had. I left him there, sitting alone with his too sweet coffee and his regrets. I didn't text Dylan for 3 weeks. His number sat in my phone, transferred from the napkin, saved under Dylan Crawford, no last name needed. I'd open my messages, start to type, then delete everything and put my phone away. What would I even say? Hey, thanks for the apology. Want to grab coffee again? That felt too casual for the weight of our history. But anything more serious felt like I was making this into something bigger than it needed to be. So, I did nothing until the day my company's newest client walked into our conference room. Good morning, everyone. I'm Dylan Crawford from Riverside University's athletics department. Thank you for taking the time to meet with us about rebranding our sports programs. I nearly choked on my water. Dylan's eyes found mine across the table, and I watched shock, recognition, and something that might have been joy flash across his face in rapid succession. He recovered quickly professionally, but I saw the slight tremor in his hands as he set down his presentation materials. My boss, Veronica, made the introductions. Dylan, this is our creative team. Ethan Martinez will be your lead designer on this project. Ethan and I actually know each other, Dylan said smoothly. We went to college together. It's great to see you again. The understatement of the century. The meeting proceeded with excruciating normalcy. Dylan and the athletics director presented their vision, modernizing the university's sports branding while honoring its history, appealing to prospective student athletes, increasing merchandise sales. Standard stuff. I took notes mechanically, hyper-aware of Dylan's presence across the table. He'd dressed up for this crisp, white button-down navy slacks, a tie that brought out his eyes. Professional Dylan was somehow even more devastating than casual Dylan had been at the coffee shop. Ethan. Veronica's voice broke through my thoughts. What's your initial take? I forced myself to focus. This was my job. I could do this. The vision is solid, I said, clicking through their presentation slides. Your current branding feels dated. The logo hasn't been updated since the 90s. And your color palette doesn't translate well to digital platforms. I'm seeing opportunities to create something that feels both classic and contemporary. I outlined a preliminary strategy, ideas forming as I spoke. Despite the personal complications, I found myself getting excited about the project. It was a good challenge, the kind of work I loved. Dylan listened intently, occasionally nodding or jotting notes. When our eyes met, I saw admiration, their professional admiration for my ideas, and I had to remind myself that this was business, not personal. The meeting wrapped up with timelines and next steps. Veronica wanted initial concepts in 2 weeks, with Dylan and his team providing feedback for refinement, which meant I'd be working closely with him for at least the next 2 months. Perfect, as everyone filed out. Dylan lingered. Ethan, do you have a minute? I glanced at Veronica, who waved us off. Take your time. Dylan, it was wonderful meeting you. Ethan will take excellent care of your project. When we were alone in the conference room, Dylan spoke first. I had no idea you worked here. When we hired the firm, I didn't see the team list until this morning. He ran a hand through his hair, a nervous gesture I was starting to recognize. If this is going to be uncomfortable, I can request a different designer. I don't want to make your job difficult. Part of me wanted to take that out. But another part, the professional part that had landed me this position, refused to let personal history interfere with good work. It's fine, I said, gathering my materials. This is what I do, and your project is exactly the kind of challenge I enjoy. We can keep this professional. Can we? Dylan asked quietly. Because I've been hoping you'd text me for 3 weeks. And now here you are. And I don't know if that's fate, or coincidence, or just bad luck. It's business, I said firmly. And that's all it needs to be, right? Of course. He looked disappointed but accepting. Well, I look forward to seeing your concepts. Based on what you described in there, I think you really understand what we're trying to achieve. I nodded and headed for the door. Ethan. I paused, not turning around. I really am glad it's you working on this. Even if it's just professional. Your talent. You should know I've followed your career. The campaigns you've done are incredible. That stopped me. You've followed my career? I told you. I think about you every day. His voice was soft. I'm proud of what you've accomplished. I hope that's not weird to say. It should have been weird. It should have felt invasive or uncomfortable. Instead, it felt complicated. Everything with Dylan felt complicated. I'll email you by end of week with preliminary ideas, I said, avoiding his confession entirely. We can set up a call to discuss, okay? He didn't push for more. I'll watch for your email. Over the next week, I threw myself into the project. I researched Riverside's history, studied their current athletes and programs, analyzed their competition's branding. I sketched concepts late into the night, experimenting with different visual directions. And if I occasionally thought about Dylan while I worked about the passion in his voice when he talked about the student athletes, about the way his face lit up, discussing the university's legacy. That was just professional engagement with my client. I sent 3 distinct concepts on Friday afternoon, each with detailed explanations and mock-ups. By Saturday morning, Dylan had responded with thoughtful feedback on all 3. His insights were smart, specific, and showed he'd actually studied my work rather than just glancing at it. We set up a video call for Monday to discuss. When his face appeared on my screen, I felt that now familiar jolt. He'd clearly been working out before our call. His hair was slightly damp, and he wore a faded t-shirt that clung to his shoulders in distracting ways. "Sorry," he said, noticing my expression. "Baseball practice ran late. I should have cleaned up first." "It's fine. Let's just go through the concepts." For the next hour, we talked branding strategy. Dylan asked smart questions, pushed back on ideas that didn't quite work, and got genuinely excited about the direction that incorporated vintage elements with modern, clean lines. Our creative chemistry was undeniable. We built on each other's ideas naturally, the conversation flowing easily. It reminded me of something, of that brief moment at the party 5 years ago, before everything went wrong, when we'd talked about music and art and stupid campus politics, and I'd thought maybe, just maybe, there was something there continued to 06 am worth exploring. "This one," Dylan said, pointing to the concept that merged old and new. "This feels right. It honors where we've been while showing where we're going. Can you develop this further?" "Absolutely. I'll have refined versions by Wednesday." "Great." He paused, then added, "Working with you, it's the highlight of my week. Getting these emails, having these calls. I look forward to them." "Dylan, I know. Professional only. I'm just stating a fact." He smiled slightly. "You're brilliant at what you do, Ethan. This project is in good hands." After we hung up, I sat staring at my blank screen for a long time. Working with Dylan was easier than I'd expected. We collaborated well, communicated clearly, respected each other's expertise, and that scared me. Because every call, every email, every small moment of connection made it harder to remember why. I was supposed to keep him at arm's length. 3 weeks into the project, Dylan asked if I'd be willing to come to campus to see the facilities in person. It might help with the environmental graphics we discussed. Plus, you could meet some of the athletes, get a feel for the energy we're trying to capture. It was a reasonable request, and it gave me an excuse to see him in person, which I absolutely was not admitting I wanted to do. I drove to Riverside on a Thursday afternoon, trying to ignore the anxiety that crept up as I approached campus. But walking through those gates with Dylan felt different this time. He gave me a tour of the new athletics center built since my graduation, me to coaches and athletes with genuine warmth and pride. The students clearly loved him. They greeted him with enthusiasm, joked comfortably, sought his advice on everything from game strategy to class schedules. This was Dylan in his element, and watching him interact with these young athletes, I saw why he'd come back here. He was making amends in real time. Being the mentor he'd needed at their age, they really look up to you. I observed as we walked across the field toward the baseball diamond. Grabbed 2 bottles of water from a cooler and handed me one. Every kid who walks into my office questioning their identity, wondering if they can be both an athlete and openly gay, is a chance for me to do better than the people who were supposed to guide me. You've created a safe space. I'm trying too. He took a long drink. We started a LGBTQ+ student-athlete group last year. It's small, but it's growing. Some days I look at these kids being so brave, so authentically themselves, and I just think, this could have been me. Should have been me. I sat on the bleachers overlooking the empty field. The late afternoon sun cast everything in golden light, and for a moment it felt like we existed outside of time. Outside of our painful history. Do you ever wonder, Dylan asked quietly, what might have happened if I'd been different back then? I try not to, I admitted. What ifs are dangerous, but do you? He turned to look at me, his blue eyes intense. That night at the party, before everything went wrong, did you feel it too? That pull between us? My heart rate kicked up. Dylan, this isn't appropriate. We're working together. The project's almost done. Another 2 weeks, and we'll present to the board, finalize everything, and our professional relationship will be complete. He shifted slightly closer. So I'm asking now, while I still have an excuse to be in your life. Did you feel it? I could lie. Should lie. But something about this moment, the golden light, the empty field, the vulnerability in his expression pulled the truth out of me. Yes, I whispered. I felt it. You were magnetic, Dylan. Everyone felt drawn to you, including me. It wasn't everyone, he said softly. It was you specifically. I'd noticed you all semester in the dining hall, at the library, walking across the quad with your sketchbook. You were so contained, quietly confident, comfortable in your own skin in a way I'd never been. And that night, when you smiled at me, really smiled, I wanted to know what that felt like. To be seen by you? So you tried to kiss me? So I panicked and tried to kiss you, then panicked more when you were kind about rejecting me, then destroyed both our lives because I couldn't handle my own feelings. He laughed bitterly. I'm an excellent case study in how not to process attraction.
Dylan?
I know I don't get a second chance. I know I ruined any possibility of anything between us. But I need you to know that every day I regret it. Not just what I did to you, but what I stole from us. From what we might have been, I should shut this down. Maintain boundaries. But sitting here with him, seeing the raw honesty in his face, I felt 5 years of armor cracking. What are you asking me, Dylan? He was quiet for a long moment. I guess I'm asking if there's any world where you could see past who I was and give who I am now a chance. Not now. I understand there's too much to work through. But someday, when the project's done, when enough time has passed, when I've proven that I'm different, could you see us trying? Trying what exactly? Anything. Friendship. Coffee that isn't loaded with 5 years of baggage. Getting to know each other as the people we've become instead of the kids we were. He paused. And if in getting to know each other, we discover that pull is still there, maybe exploring that too. I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of the decision pressing down. The safe answer was no. Keep Dylan in the past where he belonged. Protect myself from the risk of being hurt again. But I'd spent 5 years being safe. And sitting here with him, I realized something. I was curious. Not just about who Dylan had become, but about who we might become together. I can't promise anything, I said finally, opening my eyes to meet his gaze. The hurt was real, Dylan. The scars are real. And trust. That's not something you just get back because you apologize and seem sincere. I know, but I took a breath. When this project is done, when our professional relationship ends, we could try coffee again. Real coffee, not loaded with history coffee. Just two people seeing if they can build something new on the ashes of something terrible. The smile that broke across his face was incandescent. Really? Really? Felt my own lips curving upward. But Dylan, I need you to understand. This isn't forgiveness. This is just willingness to explore possibility. If you hurt me again, I won't. He said it with such conviction that I almost believed him. I swear to you, Ethan, I would rather lose you completely than hurt you again. Good, because you won't get another chance after this one. We sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the sun sink lower over the baseball field. It felt significant, somehow ending, where so much of Dylan's old life had centered, opening space for something new. I should get going, I said eventually. I have a 2-hour drive back to the city. Or... Dylan stood, offering me his hand to help me up from the bleachers. There's a decent hotel near campus, and a really good Thai restaurant that opened last year. We could have dinner. Keep it professional, discussing final project details. But also, just spending time together. No pressure. Looked at his extended hand, at the hope in his eyes, at the man he'd become, and I took it. His fingers closed around mine, warm and solid. And for just a moment, I let myself imagine what it might feel like to hold this hand regularly, to build something real with Dylan Crawford. It was terrifying, but it was also maybe worth the risk. Ty sounds good, I said. But I'm buying. You bought coffee last time, deal? He didn't let go of my hand immediately. Thank you, Ethan, for giving me this chance. I won't waste it. The presentation to the university board went flawlessly. They loved the final branding concept, the merger of classic and contemporary that Dylan and I had developed together. By the end of the meeting, they'd approved the full implementation, complementing both the athletics department's vision and our firm's execution. Veronica was thrilled. Dylan's bosses were thrilled. And I felt a strange mix of pride in the work and sadness that this phase was ending. After the board meeting, Dylan walked me to my car in the parking lot. So he said, leaning against my driver's side door, "Our professional relationship is officially complete." It looks that way, which means he pulled out his phone. "I can ask if you're free this Saturday without it being a conflict of interest." My stomach flipped nervously. "What did you have in mind?" "There's an art gallery opening in the city. New exhibition featuring LGBTQ+ artists. I saw the listing and thought of you. I remember you used to sketch all the time. Thought maybe you'd enjoy it? We could grab dinner after, somewhere nice but not too formal. Just a date, if you're interested." A date. With Dylan Crawford. 6 months ago, the idea would have been laughable. But now, I'm interested, I said, unable to stop my smile. "Text me the details." "Yeah." His whole face lit up. "Really?" "Really." "But Dylan, this is going to be slow." "I need slow." "Slow is good." "Slow is great." He stepped back from the car, giving me space. "I'll take whatever pace you need, Ethan. We've got time." I drove away, watching him in my rearview mirror, standing in the parking lot with his hands in his pockets and the biggest smile on his face. And for the first time in 5 years, I let myself believe that maybe, just maybe, some stories got second chances. Saturday night arrived with surprisingly little anxiety. Dylan picked me up at 7, looking unfairly good in dark jeans and a fitted charcoal sweater that made his eyes impossible to ignore. "You look amazing," he said when I answered the door, his gaze traveling over my burgundy button-down and black slacks with obvious appreciation. "You clean up pretty well yourself." The gallery was in a converted warehouse downtown. All white walls and track lighting. The art was stunning, bold, emotional pieces, exploring identity, love, resilience. We moved through the space together, discussing the works. Sharing our interpretations, it felt easy, natural, like we'd been doing this for years. Instead of attempting it for the first time, this one, Dylan stopped in front of a large, abstract painting. "It reminds me of you." The piece was all dynamic, energy-deep blues flowing into brilliant golds, chaos and calm existing simultaneously. "Why?" I asked. "Because you contain multitudes," he said simply. "You're successful and professional, but also creative and passionate. You survived something terrible but didn't let it make you bitter. You're careful but brave enough to give second chances. You're remarkable." Felt heat rise in my cheeks. "That's quite the analysis from one painting." "I've had a lot of time to think about you." His voice was soft. 5 years of thinking, actually. Wondering who you'd become? Hoping you were happy? And now getting to actually know you. You're even more incredible than I imagined." We moved to the next piece. But I felt his words warming me from the inside out. Dinner was at a small, Italian place Dylan had discovered intimate, without being intimidating. With amazing food and a relaxed atmosphere, we talked for hours, the conversation flowing from art to work, to childhood memories, to dreams for the future. "I want to write a book eventually," Dylan admitted over tiramisu we'd agreed to share. About being a closeted athlete, about the damage that does, about finding yourself later than you hoped. Maybe it would help some kid going through what I went through. "You should do it," I encouraged. "You're a good writer. Your project notes were always clear and thoughtful. And your story? It deserves to be told. What about you? Any big dreams you're chasing?" I considered. "I'd like to start my own agency eventually. Something that focuses specifically on LGBTQ+ businesses and nonprofits. using design to amplify marginalized voices. That's perfect for you. Dylan reached across the table, his fingers brushing mine. Can I? Is this okay? I looked at our hands, his fingers tentatively intertwining with mine. It should have felt too soon. Instead, it felt right. It's okay, I said, not pulling away. We left the restaurant walking close together, our joined hands swinging slightly between us. The night air was cool, the city alive with Saturday evening energy. I don't want this to end, Dylan admitted as we approached where he'd parked. This has been the best night I've had in years. Same, I agreed. But good things don't have to end just because the date does. We can do this again, yeah? Hope flared in his eyes. Yeah, I had a good time. Dylan, I'd like to have more good times. He drove me home. And when we reached my building, we sat in the car for a moment. Neither quite ready to say goodbye? Can I kiss you? Dylan asked suddenly. I know it's a first date, and I don't want to rush, but I've been thinking about it all night, and I leaned over and kissed him. It was soft, tentative. Nothing like that drunken attempt 5 years ago. This was careful and sweet, full of question marks and possibilities. When I pulled back, Dylan's eyes were wide with wonder. Wow, he breathed. Good wow or bad wow? Incredible wow. He cupped my face gently. Can I do that again? This time when we kissed, it was deeper. I felt 5 years of what-ifs dissolving, replaced by the very real, very present feeling of Dylan's lips on mine, his hand in my hair, his soft sigh of contentment when we finally broke apart. We were both breathing hard. I should go inside, I said reluctantly. You should. Dylan agreed, not moving. But I really don't want you to. I laughed. Slow, remember? Right, slow. He pressed one more quick kiss to my lips. I'll text you tomorrow. I'd like that. Watched him drive away, then headed up to my apartment, unable to stop smiling. My phone buzzed before I'd even closed my door. Dylan, I know I just left, but I miss you already. Thank you for tonight, for giving us a chance. Me. Thank you for being worth the chance. Dylan, I have another confession to make. Me? Oh, Dylan, I'm falling for you already. Again. Or maybe still I'm not sure I ever really stopped. I stared at the message, my heart racing. The safe response would be to pump the brakes, remind him we were taking things slow. But sitting alone in my apartment, still tasting him on my lips, I realized I didn't want to be safe anymore. Me good, because I might be falling too. You're sure about this? Dylan asked as we stood outside my apartment building, his overnight bag slung over his shoulder. We'd been dating exclusively for 3 months now, taking things slowly but steadily. Regular dates, constant communication, building trust, brick by brick. This would be the first night we'd spent together, and while we'd agreed to take that step, I could see the nervousness in his eyes. Not nervousness about wanting me, that was clear in every heated kiss, every lingering touch. Nervousness about screwing this up. Sure, I said, taking his hand and leading him inside. Come on. My apartment was small, but cozy, decorated with art I'd collected and plants I somehow kept alive. Dylan looked around with interest, studying the space like it held clues to understanding me better. I love it, he said finally. It's very you. Creative but organized. Comfortable. I ordered Thai food, our thing now, and we ate on the couch, legs tangled together, talking about our weeks. Dylan had just finished advising a student through coming out to his team. I'd landed a major client for a Pride campaign. Our lives were separate but increasingly intertwined. After dinner, we moved to my bedroom. Not for sex, we'd agreed to wait until we were both ready, but just to be close. We lay facing each other on my bed, the city lights filtering through the window. I love you, Dylan said suddenly. I know it's only been 3 months, and maybe it's too soon to say it, but I do. I love you, Ethan Martinez. The person you are now, the person you're becoming, the person you were even when I was too broken to appreciate it. Tears pricked my eyes. I love you too. It scares me how much. Why does it scare you? Because loving you means trusting you with the parts of me that you hurt before. It means being vulnerable in the exact way that got me destroyed last time. Dylan's hand found mine in the darkness. I know. And I know saying I'm different now isn't enough. I have to prove it every day. So that's what I'll do. Every day, for as long as you'll let me, I'll prove that your trust isn't misplaced. You already have been, I admitted. 3 months of consistency, honesty, showing up when you say you will, communicating when things are hard. You've been proving it all along. I'll keep proving it. For the rest of my life, if you'll have me. I kissed him then, deep and slow, pouring everything I felt into it. Love, trust, hope, fear, desire, all of it flowing between us in the dark. When we broke apart, Dylan pulled me close, my head resting on his chest, his heartbeat steady under my ear. Thank you, he whispered into my hair, for giving me a second chance, for seeing who I could be instead of just who I was, for loving me despite everything. Thank you for becoming someone worth loving, I whispered back, for doing the work, for being brave enough to come back and face what you'd done. Fell asleep like that, wrapped around each other. 5 years of pain finally giving way to something that felt like peace. The university's annual athletics gala was in full swing. The ballroom filled with donors, alumni, and current students. Dylan stood at the podium in his formal wear, looking every inch the confident professor and coach he'd become. I watched from a table near the front, proud and slightly nervous. He'd told me he was giving a speech tonight, but he'd been mysterious about the content. Thank you all for coming, Dylan began, his voice carrying clearly through the sound system. As many of you know, I graduated from Riverside 10 years ago. I was fortunate enough to return as faculty 5 years ago, and it's been the honor of my life to work with our incredible student athletes. He paused, his eyes finding mine in the crowd. I want to talk about something I should have addressed a long time ago. About the person I was as a student here, and the person I tried to destroy because I was too scared to face myself. A confused murmur went through the crowd. I sat frozen, unsure where this was going. 10 years ago, I was a closeted gay man who dealt with my fear and self-hatred by bullying someone who had the courage I lacked. His name is Ethan Martinez, and he's here tonight. My partner, the love of my life. And the person I spent years trying to break because I was too broken myself. My heart was pounding. Dylan had told me he wanted to make amends publicly, but I hadn't expected this. Ethan survived my cruelty and built an amazing life. He became successful, confident, authentically himself, everything I was afraid to be. And when our paths crossed again last year, he did something extraordinary. He gave me a second chance I didn't deserve. Dylan's voice wavered slightly with emotion. I'm standing here tonight as an openly gay man. Proud of who I am because Ethan showed me what courage looks like. I'm able to mentor LGBTQ+ student athletes because he taught me that redemption is possible. I know love because he was willing to forgive the unforgivable. He stepped away from the podium, walking toward my table. So tonight, in front of everyone who matters, I want to say, Ethan, I'm sorry for who I was. Thank you for loving who I've become. And if you'll have me. He knelt down beside my chair, pulling a small box from his pocket. The room erupted in gasps. Will you marry me? I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. Could only feel the weight of this moment, this public declaration, this complete vulnerability. This man offering me everything he was and everything he hoped to become. Dylan. The tears were streaming down my face. You're sure? You want this? Want me forever? More sure than I've ever been about anything. His eyes were bright with tears too. I want every day with you. Every challenge, every joy, every ordinary moment. I want to prove for the rest of my life that you made the right choice giving me a second chance. I looked at him, this man who'd been my worst enemy and became my greatest love, who'd hurt me terribly and healed me beautifully, who'd grown from a scared boy into a brave man. Yes, I whispered, then louder. Yes. The room exploded in applause as Dylan slipped the ring on my finger and kissed me like we were the only two people in the world. When we broke apart, both laughing and crying, I saw the faces around you as students, colleagues, friends all, celebrating this moment with us. Professor Chen was dabbing her eyes. The athletics director was beaming, and dozens of young student athletes were watching with hope on their faces. Seeing proof that love could triumph over pain, that people could change, that happy endings were possible, even after the worst beginnings. "I love you, Dylan," murmured against my lips. "My second chance. My redemption. My home." "I love you too," I said, holding tight to the man I'd once feared and now cherished. My unexpected ending. My greatest surprise. My future. And in that moment, surrounded by cheers and love and possibility, I understood. Some stories don't end where you expect. Some villains become heroes. Some pain becomes growth. And sometimes the person you least expect becomes exactly who you need. Dylan Crawford had been my college bully, but he became so much more my partner, my love. My proof that people can change and second chances can lead to first-time happiness. Our story wasn't easy. It wasn't simple. But it was ours, and it was real, and it was just beginning.